Hello, everybody. We're just about to start in a few seconds. We're just letting everyone join the call. Hi, everybody. Even though we have some technical difficulties with hearing the video, maybe we'll listen to it later. I suggest that we get started. So, Avi and Jonah, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. It's great to get together to reflect after 2 very stimulating days. I want to start off by thanking the IAC for creating such an interesting gathering. If you told me 6 months ago we would be doing this, I just would not believe you. In essence, I'm a camp person, so I believe in being present with people. That's what we do as camp people. But in order to start this off, I just wanted to invite everyone to open one thing and or close one thing so that you can be present for this next hour we have together. So just take a moment and think about something you would have to open and or close in your life right now so you can be present right now, and I invite you to throw that in the chat. For the next hour we have together, if you'll have the capacity to unmute yourself if you want to say something, and we hope there's a lot of sharing. Also, would invite you to use your reactions if you want to clap to agree with someone or give them a thumbs up. Please do that. We hope this is a highly interactive experience. Jonah, take it away.
Awesome. So I am going to put into the chat a little bingo board. Thought it could be a fun way to start. So I just put that in the chat. If you want to open it up, you can take a look, see if you've achieved one of these things, whether it be good, whether it be bad, during our Corona period, our quarantine, our work from home or work in different places. And if there's something that pops out, whether you've done it, whether you haven't done it, take a chance and put that in the chat so we can sort of see different things that people have either done or might try out. Starting to see some come in. Made a lot of challah. It is ever present on my social media feeds. I started making sourdough at the beginning. Had to change my summer plans. I have a feeling for a lot of people on this call that might be the case. We'll keep reading these as they come in. If you get a chance and are able to rename yourself, all you have to do is hover over your picture, click the ... click rename. We'd love to see your name and then your organization, and if you're feeling empowered, your pronouns. Be very appreciated. Cooked a lot, lots of cleaning. Bingo in all directions, love that. Amazing. As people are wrapping up, looking through the bingo board and changing their names so we can see who's on the call. Scrabble, no cheating. Love that. We're going to spend some time thinking together and talking a little bit about what camp has looked like as we've shifted into this period. And as we approach 2021, what will it look like? And we'll be using Jamboard to do that, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in a couple minutes. But I wanted to kick it back to Avi to help us think a little bit about what this time means.
So the old joke goes that the rabbi goes to the congregants and says, hey, we're doing a very special Havdalah at synagogue this week. Can you come? And the person said, I can't come. He said, why can't you come? It's great. We're doing a special Camp Shabbat at synagogue this week. You should come. He says, I can't. He says, no, I know you love it. I saw you at camp. I saw you enjoying yourself. I can't come. And the rabbi says, well, but why can't you come? He says, it won't be the same. He said, why won't it be the same? You don't have a lake. How can we do Havdalah? You just can't do it without the lake. So as we sit here on this moment of a lot of sadness, a lot of people who are yearning for their lakes, yearning for their cookouts, yearning for that time out away from the city, away from the suburbs, out with their friends, having autonomous experiences, really a lot of self-guided experiences. We're also find ourselves at the end of Matot Maseh, the end of the book of Bamidbar. And at this moment, I reflect back to the beginning of Bamidbar, to one of my favorite midrashim, sort of launching the book of Bamidbar, discusses sort of that there are three ways to acquire Torah, three ways of deep learning. Torah is acquired through fire, with water, and with wilderness. And I ask us to reflect on those three elements as they might be relevant to how we think about creating Havdalah without the lake. Torah is acquired with fire, with passion. It is acquired with water, which is total immersion. It is acquired with wilderness, of really not knowing exactly where we are and wandering about a bit. And I like to think that these are three things that could guide us as we enter into a new wilderness of what it means to engage people in a meaningful way. When we don't have that lake, we don't have that fire, We don't have our peers right around us and a present around us. That we need to dig deep into what is our passion, why are we doing what we're doing, what does it mean to create immersive experiences, and it's great to see our friend Otan here, who's really doing a great job of creating immersive experiences online. And what does it mean that we're actually able to guide people into the unknown and get them out of their own way to do the social emotional development and learning that they do when they're in a period of growth in the wilderness. And I think with these three things in mind, I think we can actually boldly reflect on what we've learned the last 2 days, and think about where we might take the field of Jewish camping. Jonah, Jamboard us up.
Awesome. I am going to really quickly grab this link and put it in the chat. I'm going to share my screen. You may or may not be familiar with Jamboard, but I just really want to quickly walk you through its function. So this is the Jamboard that I shared with everybody. We have a couple different pages. Right now we're going to stick on this year-round engagement. The top one is going to be a pen. This is great if you see something that you agree with. You can add a check mark. If you accidentally put that, you can erase it. This button is going to let us move stickies around. The button below is actually going to let us put some stickies. We can change the color, add them. We can change the size. We can add pictures if we want. This connects directly to Google. And a laser pointer. So if you're asking some questions and maybe you're wanting to identify, you can use that and it won't leave a permanent mark. So if everybody can take a moment to go in that. And we really wanted to start, we're going to be talking about 3 different buckets, but we really wanted to start with year-round engagement of. And we'll make it so that you can unmute yourself and talk. But let's take 3 minutes and think of these 3 different encatchments. So campers, families, staff. And let's write down some successes and some challenges of historic year-round engagement. And as we think towards the future, where do we identify some successes or challenges? So let's take a couple minutes. I advocate towards clicking on this sticky note. And
if there's anything you specifically heard in the last 2 days from things you've seen, someone who spoke, that impacted how you see how we do year-round engagement for campers, families, or staff, throw that in here as well. Did I skip a step, Jonah?
Nope, that's great. We've heard a lot about different modalities and tools and approaches, and I think this is a great opportunity to talk through what are some of the challenges that we've encountered, and is there possibly something that we've learned over the last 2 days that could combat that, or something that has been really successful, and maybe there is something that also we've learned really helps lift that up. I'm just going to go to gallery view to see if anybody has any questions. You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. We're just going to spend about 2 more minutes jotting some of these down. And I will put the link back in the chat for those that have just joined. All right, let's take about 60 more seconds. All right, so I want to stop my screen share just so I can see people. Um, Hopefully you still have the Jamboard open, but as we're looking around and as people are adding some, I'm wondering, and if you would like to unmute yourself, please. I'm curious as to what are some of the successes that we're seeing, if there are any that have stood out to you, or any that we think are really possible as we head forward. I will just say, making sure campers feel seen and heard during quarantine. I think that's a really interesting one that I wanted to make sure to highlight. I know that camp for many people is a place where they get to explore themselves. So, how do we, in this moment of isolation, help provide community? So, I think that's a really interesting one. And as we shift forward, will be interesting to see how it competes with some of these challenges where we're seeing some competition with alternative programs. So a couple people pop in and out, so I'm just gonna add the Jamboard again.
It is interesting. We ran a national conference in March 11th or something like that, and we're supposed to have 840 people there. And a week out, we shifted to doing it online, and we expected to. If we got 400 people there, we thought it'd be a wild success. We ended up getting 700, almost 780 people there, or something around that range. What was interesting was revealed is how many people who were not planning on coming could come. How many it wasn't the quality of experience people were hoping for per se, but how many of those barriers were lost. I think it sort of opens up a whole nother thing here about. I definitely see Zoom fatigue across the board here, and that we didn't have it at that time. But it is interesting to think about sort of what are the markets we can reach now that we could never reach before, whether that's a distance barrier, a price barrier, or emotional barrier about sort of what it means to enter into a space that we're able to tinker with now that we weren't before, whether that's for our campers, families, or staff members.
I am wondering if there is anything that struck a chord over the past 2 days that have really thought about how you are doing year-round engagement in any of your programs over the last 2 days. And again, I welcome you to unmute yourself if you are brave and bold enough to share.
Well, I wasn't, so I didn't even know this, that there was anything going on for the last 2 days. I found out about this through a friend of mine who shared with me last night that this was happening. So I don't have that, but I can tell you that what I'd like to share is that as I'm having conversations in the, and I'm in Cleveland, I'm sorry, I'm in the GCC in Cleveland, Ohio. As we're having conversations with both public schools, the Jewish day schools, private schools, parents are really struggling with what they want, how they want their kids to spend their time outside of school, whether they're going to school in person or virtually. And it's creating a really interesting dynamic for us as to how we're planning, because not only from a point of creating engagement opportunities that are going to be more meaningful than they've already but they're not going to, if they're virtual, they're not going to want to be online. But for us, it's also about how do we monetize that. And the schools are struggling with their schedules in and of themselves, and it's making it even more complicated for us to actually get a wrap our heads around a plan for how we'll utilize our staff, our resources, our et cetera. So while there's really good ideas, getting a schedule together has become a little bit of a challenge for us.
If I may, hi, I'm Dotan. I'm from Click to Camp. I'm talking with you from Tel Aviv. And one thing that I noticed yesterday in one of the sessions, Michal from the CEO of Kaltura, the everything video company, she mentioned something that I really related to, which is that when we speak about remote learning and the future of learning, it's very different than future of education. And I think in camp we have learning, but we definitely have a lot more education. And education is not just about gaining knowledge, it's about creating a community and being together and socializing. And I think the year-round engagement opportunity for camps is all about maintaining that community. Another thing is that education is a lot about the educator. It's not just let's play some recorded videos and call it a program and call it something that is education. I think the opportunity, the challenge and the opportunity, but if we look at camps, when the kids go to camp, then it's all about their counselor, their staff, their role models. And this is something that camps have an advantage at, that can play a very important role in year-round programs.
I think there's the really interesting notion there of what do camps really excel at, and in-person experiential education is a huge component of that. And I just thought over the past couple days there's been some really interesting ideas of how to keep that experiential and how to do it in a different space. And I'm actually happy to see Lenny here, because I think they were actually thinking a little bit about how do we do this in a space that's inherently virtual. So I think a lot of the challenge is going to be what is the avenue that camps really excel at, and how can they shine versus I see a lot of, or at least a couple posted notes about competing with alternative programs or competing with something that's already out there. So I think as we think about year-round engagement, and it's really interesting to see over the past couple months of what camps have done out of sheer necessity, whether that's engagement via social or engaging their alumni base in different ways, that a lot of camps it's been organic. But really, as we pivot forward to year-round engagement, thinking a little bit about this experiential and how we move that forward.
I would just underscore that your point, Jonah, and Jotan's with, I think his name is Ben Nelson from Minerva, saying that sort of break it open, like everything's broken right now, so we're just push it further. And a lot of the sort of conversations of her last 2 days around sort of how are we going to teach these soft skills. And a lot of these ways, this is sort of the strength of what camp is offering. It's not a location with a fire and a lake. It's an educational philosophy where the proximal role model is this huge influence that teaches wisdom, maybe not the most linear knowledge in that sense, but really teaches a lot of wisdom, and it's an applied wisdom. And I think that's the question. Gilon's question about how do we monetize that is still a very open question about sort of how do you program around it, how do you make money out of it, how do you make your institution thrive in this space. But I do think there's something very powerful to recognize that we have a wealth of what families are looking for, which is a source of wisdom in its tumultuous time.
All right. I want to take us to the next slide. So at the top, you should see 1/5. If you click to the arrow to the right, that'll take us to the recruitment tab. So we've been talking to a lot of different camps over the past several weeks, if not months, and recruitment as we approach 2021, recruitment and retention is a huge topic that is of interest. So recruitment
and just to open that question up a little bit, recognizing not everyone on the call is a camp director.
Yeah.
Recruitment could not necessarily be for a camp. It recruitment for Jewish life, recruitment for any program in our larger atmosphere. Because I don't think we're not focusing on the 2 months of the summer. We're actually talking about sort of how do we recruit and retain our kids and our staff and our families for Jewish life.
Thank you, Avi. So I would love to do the same process. Let's put 2.5 minutes on the clock, and let's put in what have successes been for recruitment and what have challenges been for recruitment, and yeah. All right, let's take about 10 more seconds. I'm curious, I'm seeing under the successes for campers, no synagogue meetings. Can somebody clarify that?
I'm not sure, but they haven't necessarily proven to be successful. So there's a lot of taxing on camp professionals to do those meetings, but they don't necessarily yield leads.
Got it. I was not sure if it meant that synagogues were not actually meeting, so there was more of a push towards camp opportunities, or the taxing nature of synagogue parlor meetings.
I actually wanted to say somebody wrote no parlor meetings under challenges, where I saw that as a success actually in some ways, because finally we could actually bring people to a virtual open house, and we would get tons of families joining us for our campaign here in Israel. Big idea. We did virtual open houses, and people arrived, people came. In the past, nobody would come for a Zoom meeting about camp. So that's actually is a challenge, but it's also a success.
And building on what Dotan just said, not only did it bring more, because it was easy for people to show up, they literally had to turn on their screen. The champions in the community, whether it's our lay leaders, whether it's our ambassadors, whether it's our donors, they showed up in bigger numbers to meetings, and therefore we had bigger supports in the community. So so it's interesting that no parlor meetings is on there. I'd be curious as to, if you're willing to speak, why that was put up there as a negative or as a challenge.
I think I put that one up there. Actually, I think I agree with Dotan. I think the opportunity is to reinvent it. The challenge is that's where a lot of camps have been filling themselves up, is a trusted parent who is a current family of a camp invites friends over, and they become ambassadors to bring people in, and that's where they actually book camp. I agree with Dotan. That is also the opportunity, which is to reinvent that. But that is interesting to do that work of reinventing the actual parlor meeting with virtual parlor.
Sorry to leave this conversation. I have to go to another meeting, but and I'm sorry I missed the last 2 days. I wish I'd known.
It's all on Facebook, I think, where you could see the videos.
I'll go look.
And the most fascinating thing I learned is most people are watching it at 1.7 times the speed at which it was originally recorded. So.
I can't take it in that fast.
We appreciate you joining us, and
it's good to see you.
Well,
let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. How to commit during the unknown is a challenge to families. And we can talk a little bit about this as we look towards 2021. Successes for staff. Economy sucks. Limited internships. There's a really interesting dynamic that I was on the phone with a camp director, and they said that they were giving staff opportunities that they had never given their staff before. And whether that was engaging in donors, whether that was making calls that they had never been doing before, or actually facilitating much like they would, but it's been in a different capacity and on their own schedule, which I think is not something that a traditional camp has offered in the past. So just something interesting to see. Lenny, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I'm not able to get onto that your board, but I think that if I had to project out based upon history, I think one of the challenges, whatever tomorrow is going to start to look like, is one of the same challenges from previous generations, is the challenge of staff trying to be creative and a supervisor or an executive using the word no. Because either they don't understand the new technology or the new direction or the new lay of the land, or that if it's a budget issue, that they're not going to be able to try it. And especially today, knowing some of the challenges of agencies with budgets, I might be wrong, okay, but I've just found that throughout my career, when young professionals hear the word no, or they can't dream in color and do something a little different, and it's clear, the face of our world is going to change to a lot of things being different, and I'm just wondering if that's going to have a negative impact.
At the same time, a lot of the tools that we're using are completely democratized, so they don't need to ask for permission to use a new technology to engage a new population, because there's no budget connected to it. So it's interesting how, Lenny, that door could swing both directions.
Sure.
But that also means a lot more trust. I think one of the things that I been fearful of or interested in is sort of the openness of new platforms, but also makes me incredibly afraid, because the benefits of camp is that we have all their security in measure, so we know who's engaging who. We can actually make sure our kids are safe. So it's sort of the other side of that door swinging is it's too open. It's too, so how do we strike that balance of like open and engaging and safe and comforting?
What I think I was looking at with the budget also is, I understand what you're saying, you're correct. I'm starting to think maybe because I have a little bit more time, I'm watching a little bit more TV. And out here, you see a lot. I'm in Scottsdale right now. See a lot of commercials for selling homes online without even visiting a home. A lot of selling cars without even having to go to the dealership, and being able to buy your car online and have it delivered to you. So I'm wondering what the platform to build that, and then what the platform would be for a camp or an organization or an agency to build whatever the technology is in order to meet the need of where the customer is today. Again, I don't know, but I'm thinking about it and I'm looking at it. I actually looked at it a little bit closer between last night and today, knowing that I was going to jump on this session and thinking, is there an opportunity there or is there a challenge or both?
I just want to underscore what Lenny we were getting at, because I think it's fascinating, is we've definitely seen this as camps were painfully having to be transparent in a process they didn't know what was going on, in the spring. That the most interesting commodity they actually have is trust, because trust of them as the institution. You're going to send your kids to me, whether that's virtually or physically. The thing I'm actually selling you on is the fact that you trust me. And what's interesting is when they're very expressive and very communicative, they actually created a lot more trust of what's going on, that you could buy what they're going to sell. And it'll. So I'm just thinking about your cases of sort of like buying a house from you have never seen, buying a car that you've never kicked the tires. Is how do we actually maintain the commodity of trust with whatever we're selling, so that the people say, I want to buy this. And I think globally, not about camp, but just about sort of the Jewish community, how do we actually inculcate all of our would-be customers that what we have to offer is the highest quality and they can trust it. They don't even have to kick the wheels. They can just trust it. And once you actually have that, they'll buy anything. And once you don't have it, doesn't matter what you're selling, they won't buy it.
Sure.
Does this recognize sort of what that means to actually have that trust and to sort of do whatever you can to preserve that commodity?
I think, Avi, that the trust question is so important. Also, as somebody who also run camps here in Israel, and it's hard to be transparent, and we had to make decisions that we had to change then and things like that. So it's really hard. But at the end of the day, it's all about the relationships. So and seeing your child grow. I mean, if you see your child grow, even when they do a virtual program, but you see that there is a real relationship between the kids and their educator, their staff, and you see a growth happening, then you say, all right, so this is real. And once this is real, then you trust and you follow whatever the camp will tell you that's happening.
Okay. In efforts to keep us going, I'd love for us to change to the third slide. And Lenny, I'm going to share the screen, and if there's any that you want to put under successes, challenges, any of those, feel free to just put them in the Zoom chat, and I'm happy to add them for you. All right. So this is summer 2021. So for these different demographics, what does summer 2021 look like successfully with its challenges?
And I would note that myself looking at this, when we designed this, is different than I'm thinking about it now after these 2 days of hearing people, is how much is going to change for our campers, families, and staff in the year 2021 before we get to summer 2021. Meaning, like, what has already changed, given what we've heard people talk about higher education or day school education or public school education. All those things are going to be shifting. What are the implications for what summer 2020 will look like?
So I'm just going to note there are a lot of similarities across the board here. Whether that's Zoom burnout, the need for something new and different, longing for a traditional summer, or some of the stuff that they missed during this year, and the want and need to see friends could help with registration. And I think the hard part is there's still a big question mark for what 2021 looks like, especially for camps operating, and will be interesting. However, I think a lot of what we talked about in the last two slides are opportunities for camps to engage and continue doing some of the work in the off season that they typically either haven't succeeded in or thrived in the past, and could lead and build to 2021. And I think it's interesting if we were to return to a question mark summer 2021, what will all of that work have shifted and really helped in identifying opportunities as well.
I think it's also relevant thinking about, even if we're thinking about past the institutional needs, about like, will these institutions be able to open or not open? What kind of, protections they have to have in place? I'm also interested to think about sort of like developmentally, where will our campers and staff be next summer? What do we have to do differently in terms of staff training and orientation, or even orienting our campers to camp next summer, when some have had a lot more autonomy than they've had in the past. Some have had much less autonomy than they've had in the past. There's been a lot of traumatic experiences that we as a community have endured. Maybe a lot of family members have been lost. A lot of things will have happened already that they didn't necessarily experience as a community, but here we are back as a community. And sort of how do we sort of bring in those experiences and be aware? And I think it's a lot easier for us to sort of focus on the institution as opposed to like, what is the experience as we come back from all the trauma and we come back from the virtual to an in-life experience? What will that readjustment period look like? Lenny looked like he was about to raise his finger.
Just as a question onto that I've been thinking about in the cultural shift of what we'll call the traditional cabin group. So the cabin group was together in the summer for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it was. And now there's the possibility for that cabin group or a group to be together on a year-round basis, depending on what the camp does or doesn't do. And now if you're a group of 20 8th grade boys that, somehow your camp did something cutting edge, okay, during the fall, winter, and spring, whatever it should be. Could be esports, could be whatever. That group normally wouldn't have been together. And now, if they have the opportunity to go to camp next summer, have you guys, you and Jonah, have you thought about, or has anybody talked about what that change could look like for camp? Because my friend that I went to camp with in St. Louis or Cleveland or Akron, or that I don't see, but for once every summer, now I sort of get to see on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a win and lose. I mean, you have to think about all the wins you have now of being able to virtually connect with all your friends. And the reality is, long before COVID happened, my kids are texting with their friends from camp all the time, all the time. So there's nothing new there. But the other side you have to notice is, like, all the B'nai Mitzvah, all the things that didn't happen in person, they had a virtual experience, but there are some things gained and some things lost. And I just want to say, like, it's going to be interesting as we think about, even if we can imagine a fullness of summer 2021, which might be a half occupancy, half time, meaning all these other things that we might need to do to make that happen. How do we do it so that we get the most out of the in-person experience? Because I think everyone's on this phone call because we are intrigued at what the virtual world is pushing us toward. We're tantalized by it, maybe troubled by it. We're playing with it. We're open to it. A lot of people mentioned, so I want to be open to whatever is coming next. And at the same time, there's a yearning for what we had in the past, and maybe we can emerge from all this a lot better. But that means we have to be a lot more thoughtful when when things go, quote unquote, back to normal. Because how are we going to decide what the new normal is going to look like when we get to have the best of off-season engagement, we get to have the best of all this, and we get to come back together in person. So what do we get in those moments? It's a lot. Yes, I know it's a lot. And I'm just very sympathetic to sort of like that kid who didn't have the CIT experience this summer, who's parachuted in next summer to be a junior counselor with with 12, 14-year-old boys, and saying, oh my God, how do I navigate this? It's that kind of level of preparation we need to think about, sort of like, how will we help them deal at that moment of reentry? That is the depth of what we could get out of that experience.
Guys, obviously somebody wrote the desperate to be out of the house, and the families and the staff, and everybody wants to be out of the house and not on Zoom anymore. But that may, like one thought that I have now is that may actually create a different challenge. I mean, we all know how to deal with homesickness, but what is homesick after a year, a year of being at home? It's a whole different sphere of being homesick. It might actually be so much harder for campers to leave their safe zone after being there, and we don't know when they will go out again, if it will be long before summer or just before next summer, hopefully before summer. And that may bring up a different challenge for next summer. Any thoughts on that?
I think there's a huge mental health component, and I know we have a lot of work at FJC that we're working on this, and I think as we approach the 2021 summer, there's going to be a lot of stuff that both educationally and social emotional and mental, all of that kind of stuff that we're going to need to think about as we enter the 2021 summer, especially if it means not being in our homes. Homesickness has always been something that camps have dealt with, and it may just be to a larger extent. So I'm sure it is something that we're going to have to approach, but I also think there is a laundry list of things that, as we think about what it means to go from something where it's been a relatively virtual experience to something that's in person. Just to keep us on track, it looks like we don't have too much time until we have to wrap up. I just want to go to slide 4, the moving forward, the what next, what are the action items, and kick it over to Avi.
Oh, great. You want to share your screen as as we've been asked for the last 2 days, which is what is the one element that will change in the next year? I offer you guys to think about what is an element that you will change. What is one thing you will commit to doing after hearing the last 2 days of thought-provoking notions about what does this new world look like? Invite you to throw that in here, put it in the chat, whatever works for you. of something something you think is going to change or something you want to see change that you will do.
So a couple different things that I wanted to end and close with. One is an innovation challenge that we're running at FJC. We are gathering people who have new and innovative ideas. jewishcamp.org/innovation to find out more information. But people are going through a process where they are submitting their ideas, partnering with at least 2 other people from a camp. And there are dollars up to $10,000 to test and give those a try. We are also, it's live right now, the experienceshook.org, where we are curating and sharing a lot of different opportunities, especially as we approach towards 2021. So we highly recommend that you check that out. And we also wanted to put our contact information. If you have ideas, questions, anything, Avi at jewishcamp.org and Jonah at jewishcamp.org. So we, always encourage people to reach out and send us emails if they have questions or want to follow up on anything. And then I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to join this breakout session. And the 2-day first ever Zoom Out eSummit. A lot of really amazing stuff and some new ideas came out of this. So I'm thankful for being here, and also want to thank the Israeli American Council and the Innovative Learning Center of Tel Aviv University for bringing this session to Jewish educators from all around the world. Right after this is concluded, a survey will be sent out. Please take a minute to let us know about the experience and how it could be better next time. It's really an undertaking to do something new for the first time, and kol hakavod. So thank you, and kick it back to Nadav.
Toda, Jonah and Avi. Just to finish with a fun tone, we're going to share with you a short video that we made for you. And hopefully this will inspire you to fill out the survey and take some of the ideas that we've learned in the past 2 days into your fields. אז תודה רבה לכולם.